Ladies and gentlemen, we're so thankful to have this opportunity to share with you today. This microphone is not for amplification; it's for video. So, sorry about the HVAC, but a lot of people inside will be unhappy with us if we turn it off because it takes a while to get that thing going again. Once it shuts down, some of you are raising hands in testimony. But welcome this afternoon. I think everyone here, but just in case, I'm Chris Whaley, and it's an honor to get to be a part of this, and I'm so thankful to be asked to get to share just a few brief words about our friend and colleague, Dr. Arthur Lee. And every time I think of Arthur, and I know this may sound strange, but it may be that some of you sort of share this, I have this automatic, impulsive reaction that I both smile and get a lump in my throat every time I think of Arthur. Both of them happen simultaneously every single time. I can't think of Arthur without smiling. I can't think of Arthur without, and there it goes. But we're so honored to get to have this time. And I want to thank Jessica and all the committee for all of the work in getting this together, for Brad for the wonderful tree that you'll get to go up in a few minutes and get to take a look at. That's going to get much, much bigger. Now, Brad, none of us knows what we have. Is it a tulip poplar? Okay, and so eventually that'll get probably how big? Get real big. Okay, very good. And as I understand, underneath, there were some rocks that you hit. Yeah, so very appropriate that he hit rocks and that they are now displayed at the base of the tree. I'm not going to, out here in the middle of the sun, not going to talk a long time, but I'll have to tell you, I was also debating what to wear today. Warm day, and had a meeting this morning, and I thought, well, I'll put a suit and a tie on, and then opened up the closet, Sylvia, and this is the first thing that I saw, and I thought, well, that's just meant to be. For those of you who don't know, Arthur was a major contributor, early, a founding contributor to A Lab in a Box, and so I wear this today in his honor and in his memory. And anytime I think of Arthur, I think about several things, and I mean this with the greatest respect. I think quirky, and I say that with all love, absolute 100% love in a good way, because, I would say that to him. He's also one of the smartest folks that I've ever known. And then, of course, you can't think about Arthur without thinking about his deep passion and commitment to student success. And if there was ever a human being that walked the planet that wanted students to succeed, it was our friend Dr. Arthur Lee. I know that's true for everyone who is here, but it's absolutely one of the things, again, that always comes to mind with Arthur. And so with that, again, thank you for being here. I'd like to turn it over now to our colleague, Connie Blaylock. Welcome.
I'm going to use my best teacher voice to tell you a little bit about what Arthur meant to me. I moved here on a Sunday, and Monday I started working. I came here from the Tri-Cities, so it wasn't all that far away, but it was far enough that I had to uproot my entire life to come here. That was about a little over 7 years ago. My very first day at my office in the Goff building, my next door neighbor, Arthur Lee, came over and introduced himself, and then made some silly little joke like Arthur always did. It was probably something about living through the Depression. He was that old. That was his regular kind of joke. The next day I went to convocation, and I had never been to the Harriman campus. I'd only been to this campus, and only two times before I'd started working here. So I managed to get to the campus, thank goodness for Garmin, and I got there and I parked in that lower parking lot, and I got out of my car and I'm looking around trying to figure out where the heck I'm supposed to be going. And there's Arthur Lee. And Arthur says, "You need some help finding this place?" And he escorted me into the building, showed me where the elevator was so I didn't have to deal with stairs, and we got up to my first convocation. Arthur always had a smile on his face for you when you walked through the halls. I didn't see him all that much, even though his office was right next to me. But he was always smiled and always said hello. And that's why I miss him a lot. Thank you. Who's next?
When I first came to Roane State in the 04-05 school year, I had a crazy schedule going to Scott and Campbell counties, still go to Scott, and one of the people who first introduced himself to me when I started was Arthur, and it was really probably my first close friend at Roane State. When I came here, we would talk about rocks, about space, about investment and retirement, one of his favorite topics. We would talk about politics, about travel. We both love to travel. And eventually we'd get our families together and meet for dinner sometimes. And, again, he really made me feel, and I was an adjunct at the time, like I was really a part of this college. And I think it really set me on a path to really wanting to incorporate myself into the institution. His honest quirkiness that he didn't even try to hide, his kindness, and openness really made him a relatable person. Really, I think, helped him reach his students. He was at the same time extremely knowledgeable, great at explaining things, but also not intimidating. And that made him a very, very special person. And I know he touched the lives of so many people that I know, and probably many more that we'll never know, who have come through this school, either as students or as colleagues, and who he had talked to, taken under his wing, and just been a good friend and a good mentor to. And so I really felt like I needed to say something about my dear friend on this day. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all of you coming out. I know we've got students here and staff and faculty and friends and administrators. And I have had the privilege of knowing Arthur since I started in the Math Science Division. We were colleagues starting from 2016. And so my first semester, I had 8 3-hour labs. That was my assignment. And one of them just happened to be in the Goff lab. And so I walked into that lab, and it was quite different from most of the other labs because it was a Mac sitting on the desk. And that's not typical for our classrooms, as the faculty know. And so somebody said, "Oh, yeah, that's because Dr. Lee teaches here." And I thought, okay, well, that's unique. I was teaching organic chemistry in that lab. And if any of you guys have had a chemistry class, you want the glassware to be sparkling clean and dry and, ready for your experiments that are very fussy to sometimes get to run. Well, the instructor table in front of me was covered usually in a pile of dirt and rocks because I shared the lab with Dr. Arthur Lee. And so the students and I would always joke about the rock people who had been there the class before us and the dust and the dirt on their pristine lab benches and things like that. But as time went on, I actually got to know Arthur Lee. As Chris mentioned, he was one of our founding and continuing developers of Lab in a Box. In fact, we had 3 of the kits of the 7 that were developed by him. And so I laughed when Chris was wearing this shirt because those who Arthur, again, not to be an insult, but Diane and I would always joke before the training, you got to remind Arthur to look for that Lab in a Box t-shirt. It's probably balled up under his bed, or something like that. And so anyway, I really did enjoy working with him. Excuse me. Every summer he would come and do the teacher trainings on the fossils kits with me. That was the third one he did with us. And he was really just a kid in a candy store. He loved interacting with the students. He loved interacting with the teachers. as you talked about, he loved to joke about how old he was or things like that, just to break the ice and really be approachable. Despite having this wealth of knowledge, he had all of this vocabulary about fossils that I couldn't even begin to comprehend. He would talk about things being benthic or nectonic or planktonic or terrestrial. There were porifera and protozoa and bryozoa and brachiopoda and on and on and on. So he was, a wealth of knowledge, but also just so welcoming and so approachable. So one of the interesting stories I had was from the summer before last. We did a bunch of trainings, and the first set were in Harriman, and he came that day, did his thing, everything was fine. And then the next set was up in La Follette, and he wasn't scheduled till the afternoon. And so the training went on all morning long just fine. We had lunch. And then I started to realize there was no Arthur. And I got a phone call from Arthur, and he was in Harriman. And so he was looking for us, even though we were in La Follette. But thank goodness for the pandemic, we'd figured out how to use Zoom. We had him Zoom up to us. And so what's kind of special to me about that is I have that Zoom of his doing his last fossil training for the teachers. So that's always kind of something I'll have to watch, and I can share with the teachers who are new to the box, who haven't had it before. He was also, for me, my mentor in the tenure process. And so it was really nice to work with him in that way. He took me to Faculty Senate. He reviewed my teaching materials and gave me feedback. And so that was really nice that he got to do that with me. And he would even support like the chemistry club. One of the weeks of National Chemistry Week in October a few years back, the theme was Chemistry Rocks. So he did a little talk for my students. Another time we went on a field trip out to the K-25 History Center, and he and his fiance came. And so just all of those little things that he would do for us was pretty amazing. So, as you guys probably know, he was a beloved faculty member for 21 years, and I just am really grateful for the time that I had with him, and I'm excited that we were able to plant this tree in his memory. So, Chris?
Thank you to all of his colleagues who were able to share. And if I gave the microphone, I know every person here who knew Arthur has an Arthur story, multiple Arthur stories. In fact, I won't call him out, but after this is over with, talk to Dan Hyder about the first time he ever met Arthur when Arthur was interviewing for his job. That's another good one. And we didn't even get into his passion for the inmates at Morgan County Correctional Facility and how we would travel there semester after semester and would always forget to take his lighter out of his pocket. And he would get in there and we would get calls saying, we are not going to let him come back unless he leaves his lighter in his automobile. But thank you so much for coming. We invite you now, again, thanks to Brad's generosity and kind act, carefully if you want to go up and see the tree. And again, thank you so much for coming out in person to honor our friend and colleague's great memory. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to all those who organized it. Have a great afternoon.